there's no doubt women voters will play a pivotal role in determining the outcome of the presidential election. After all, women have voted at higher rates than men in every election since 1980. And this race is expected to be no different. That's why Glamour is out with a new interactive election series and a landmark poll surveying 2,000 women about the issues that matter to them the most. And the results were eye-opening. Joining us now, Glamour Editor-in-Chief Samantha Berry, along with MSNBC contributor and vice chair of the Forbes and Know Your Value 3050 Summit, Huma Abedin, and editor of Forbes Women, Maggie McGrath. Hi, team. And Samantha, what jumped out to you in terms of women's voting intentions to you the most, the issues that matter to them the most? What did you see?
Across the political divide, economy was the number one thing that they talked about. There was no surprise there, but I think their surprise in the piece that we did was, I think, often women are looked as this monolith, right? You're looked at, in 2020, black women voters were applauded for bringing Joe Biden and having him win. And white women were seen as a big driver for Trump winning in 2016. And I think what we get into in the poll is really dividing what that actually looks like. Abortion, we know, is a big topic this year, but it wouldn't necessarily fall down the party lines in the way you expect it to. And I think there's a little bit of surprises across gun legislation and abortion that need to be really eked out for us. But economy was the big one, healthcare was another one, but if you look at Republican women, right, you would expect them to maybe be anti-abortion. There's a lot of Republican women that took this poll that were for abortion, and it is an issue that is going to maybe make them change where their votes lie this year.
So, Huma, I'm curious, do you think Kamala Harris is capitalizing on the issues that Samantha just laid out for us? And also, what is going to be Harris's biggest challenge in convincing undecided female voters?
You know, Maggie, I thought there was a lot reaffirming in this poll. 49 days to go to the election. I think she had the opportunity at the debate to really lay out her plans for the country. I think a lot of what she said, women are going to respond well to based on what Samantha was saying, economy, healthcare, cost of living. I think she's also benefiting from the short sprint of this campaign. And be able to go around the country and spend time in swing states, as she should. You know, the final thing I'll say, aside from the energy shifting, because I know a lot of this information was when Biden was still in the race, I do think that the storytelling aspect, the power of storytelling, I mean, just yesterday, you know, we've seen abortion on the ballot. It has benefited the Democrats in every past election. And just yesterday, this news about this woman in Georgia dying because she didn't get the care that she needed when she lost her baby. And I think that is going to be a really important issue in November.
So, Samantha, the interactive series includes several moving stories shared by women across America. One that stood out to me was from Emma, a woman from South Carolina who shared her heart-wrenching abortion story. Why do you decide to feature these and specifically her?
It's very rare as an editor-in-chief that I cry when I edit a piece, but I did when I read the piece from Stephanie McNeil about Emma, her journey. We picked, there was an important part of her story. She's in South Carolina, which we know since the Dobbs decision has been a battleground for abortion. This woman was pregnant with her third child. 20 weeks, she figured a medical intervention said that there was a lot of abnormalities. She lived in a state where she could not do anything about it at that stage, or it became a big issue. So she traveled to Maryland, and we talked to her about that story, getting on that plane. What was that like for Emma and her husband, Zach? It was important for us as well to have Zach in the story, because often we tell these stories about women in abortion. There's often a man involved or a family involved. And I think for us, it was that story of abortion really driving it home through her story, and that what that travel looked like for her and what it felt like for her. She's a South African who, with her American husband, built their life in South Carolina. She never thought that she would be somebody that would have to deal with the issue of having access to abortion, but she did. And I think that really drove home for our audience the story that behind the numbers in the polls, right? And that was one of them. We also had Rue Wale went to North Carolina and talked to the family of the Carter family, which really kind of leaned into the fact that the unwavering black women voters for Democrats. So 88% of women in our poll, if they were black, were leaning Democrat. And I think we wanted to eke out that. The fourth story that we did was really important, and I think it's a big opportunity for Kamala Harris and her team. And that came across that it's young voters lean Democrat. They are not registered to vote in the way that the older voters are, who lean Republican. So out of our poll, only 56% of that 18 to 29-year-old group are registered to vote. That's the opportunity. And we talked to young conservatives and young Democrats on campus, and we talked about this generation of dissatisfied. And what you see is, again, 95% of the women over 65 are registered, and that's a win for the GOP because they do lean Republican.
So, Huma, this Glamour series also does a deep dive into Gen Z female voters and found that in spite of this group's loud political activism on social media, just 56% of young female voters are registered and intend to vote. And it was the lowest of any age group that Glamour polled. So what's behind this, and how do we get those numbers to increase between now and Election Day?
Well, when you look at the great story in Glamour and other polls in the last few months, you see a generation, 18 to 29-year-olds, particularly women, many of whom graduated university during COVID, having to deal with this intense political discourse on campus, the war in Gaza, the attack on LGBTQ rights, what to say and do about abortion and healthcare. And so you understand why they feel almost this sense of, I can't open my mouth, I can't take a side, that it's too difficult to be out there. I think it's why things like this Taylor Swift endorsement are huge, just to get young women to register to vote and participate. And again, I think the enthusiasm and having them have something to vote for will bring them to the polls in November.
100%. Samantha Berry, thank you so much for coming on the show this morning. We really appreciate your sharing the findings. You can check out the entire series on women in the 2024 election at glamour.com. Huma Abedin and Maggie McGrath, thank you as always.